Hello, my name is Aine Colgan, and welcome to my final project for Jan Term 144, Rwandan Women Rising. I wanted to start by introducing Rwanda. Its capital is Kigali, and it is one of the smallest countries in Africa, as you can see on this map compared to the surrounding countries. What Rwanda is most known for is the genocide that occurred in 1994. This genocide was a result of a major divide between the Tutsis and the Hutus in Rwanda. These were two different groups living in Rwanda at the same time. The Tutsis were the minority group and the Hutus disliked them, causing them to raid the Tutsis, wanting to rid them of their country. Approximately 75% of Rwanda's Tutsi minority population were violently killed. In 100 days, 800,000 people were killed. Many Hutus also suffered as well, whether they were against the violence or they may have been trying to hide Tutsis. It was a horrible time, but there is much more to Rwanda than this genocide, and I hope to prove that to you. Throughout this course, I have learned just how strong Rwandan women are and how much they care for their country. They were confident in themselves as well as their fellow Rwandan women that they would be able to bring the country of Rwanda back together. In order to create, or in this case restore, a community, everyone needs to be willing and open to forgiveness. This is what was shown by the women of Rwanda. They were strong and were able to forgive, but not forget, the horrible genocide that occurred. Forgiveness is tough, and not everyone is capable of it. However, when these Rwandan women put their mind to something, they don't stop until they get it. These women don't let the fact that they're women get in the way of doing amazing things. This is shown in our textbook, Rwandan Women Rising, with a quote on page 293. It says, "My target is to always have women striving to do their best. You have to prove you're able as a man. You're there because of your value, because you deserve it. It's not a gift. Of course, some people will say that. Every day is a continuous fight, but it's a good one." Rwandan Women Rising, page 293. They love a good fight, and they have the confidence they need to win. I have learned how to be an effective leader and what skills it takes to be a great leader. Community learning circles allowed me to practice these skills. These circles are a peacemaking practice used in order to bring peace among the group members and allow them to be vulnerable without judgment. Practicing them in class so often, as well as once with our own group, was beneficial in that it better prepared me for leadership opportunities in my future. I also learned that there are different leadership styles, and they all have their own importance. Two of these styles are transformational and transactional. As discussed in the literature review entitled Brief Summary of Nonviolent Communication, the authors describe transformational leadership as follows. It is considered that the transformational leader engage in interactions with followers based on common values, beliefs, and goals. Transactional leadership is described in the same review. The transactional leadership was described as that in which leader-follower associations were grounded upon a series of agreements between followers and leaders. By learning about these leadership styles, I now have the information I need in order to become a better leader. I felt an immense amount of sadness in my heart when learning about the genocide that occurred. When I first watched the video, Rwanda, Do Scars Ever Fade?, I was in shock. There was so much information in the video that I watched it twice, still in complete shock the second time. The pictures and videos that were shown of the abuse made me sick and allowed me to think how big of a problem this was, and I had only barely heard of it before this class. The video was the introduction, and the information still kept coming after that. From hearing personal stories in our book, to then watching videos and reading stories of how the women overcame this hardship and made something of themselves, it was an incredible roller coaster of emotions. Even though it was hard to hear and read about this terrible time in Rwandan history, it was also incredibly inspiring. It gave me hope that there's a better future for our country when hearing that Rwanda was able to move on from this genocide, with women leading the way. Women are the future, and I believe that. Now we just have to follow in the footsteps of Rwanda and bring all of our strong women forward. Nonviolent communication is something that I wasn't aware of before this class. In a handout we received in class entitled Brief Summary of Nonviolent Communication, it was defined as an approach to listening and speaking that leads us to give from the heart, connecting us with ourselves and with each other that allows our natural compassion to flourish. I remember I was in a breakout room during one class, and we were talking about the importance of nonviolent communication. We mentioned how if we were all to just learn more about this concept and try our hardest to incorporate it into our lives, our country would already be on the right track to becoming one, instead of staying as divided as we are. Sometimes it is hard to not become completely enraged at someone, or a group of people, when something doesn't go your way. Nonviolent communication is something that will help because it teaches us certain forms of language and communication skills that will help us to remain humane. This is something I'm definitely going to work on after coming to the conclusion of the positive changes it can make for our society. Engaging in community learning circles was something I've never experienced before, but they were able to help me engage in the course and with my classmates more than I would have. They allowed me to listen and learn from my classmates, and to accept their own thoughts and opinions. During my own community learning circle, I was able to hear my peers talk about their own experiences with COVID-19, both positive and negative. It was interesting to hear their answers because I don't tend to ask about how others are feeling during this difficult time. It allowed me to realize that sometimes all people need is for someone to ask how they are doing. The readings played a huge role in the understanding of leadership and peacemaking. We learned about effective ways of practicing leadership using skills such as patience and understanding. Without certain skills, it is difficult to engage in a leadership role, which is why I believe that the material I learned in this course has better prepared me for my future leadership positions. The most important experience that I will take with me is the community learning circles. I believe that being able to lead a group is an important skill to have. It is a difficult one, but knowing the right way to be a leader will make all the difference. I remember my first time leading a community circle in class. I was in the first group to lead, and I had no idea what I was doing. But as the class went on, I learned more and more skills that are important when in a leadership role. I looked to the literature review entitled Leadership Theories and Styles for more information about transactional and transformational leadership. I found that transformational leadership is a course that changes and approach targets on beliefs, values, and attitudes that enlighten leaders' practices and the capacity to lead change, as well as the transactional theory was based on reciprocity, where leaders not only influence followers, but are under their influence as well. I took this information and was able to conduct my own community learning circle outside of the classroom, and it went very well. I was able to connect everyone to the group, and I could tell how beneficial it was to not only me, but the rest of the group as well. Peacemaking is something that is often overlooked, and this is very dangerous for all of us. Peace is deserved by everyone, but unfortunately, people often get in our way of achieving this peace. In this class, I learned about nonviolent communication, which is something I believe to be an important step for us all to take towards achieving peace. It allows us to communicate peacefully, instead of in a way that will only lead to more negativity. In the same handout I discussed before, Brief Summary of Nonviolent Communication, it mentions that NVC enhances inner communication by helping us translate negative internal messages into feelings and needs. I remember talking about NVC with my co-learner, who was my sister, during our interview. We talked about how this kind of communication would only have positive effects to anyone who uses it, and that it would be beneficial to us as a whole. It may even stop the extreme violence happening in our country, but we are a long ways from that. One woman that I read about in Rwandan Women Rising was Rose K. Rose was the highest-ranking female soldier in the RPF, or the Rwandan Patriotic Front. Her story inspired me because she did what no one else thought was possible. She wanted to join the RPF, so she didn't stop until she did. They were gathering men in the city she was living in, but no women yet. She said they'd be having a meeting, and when we'd come in, they'd change the subject. They were recruiting men to join Museveni's rebel movement in the bush, with the aim of training a Rwandan force that would ultimately liberate our country. And they didn't think women would go to the army. I told them, I think you're up to something. I don't know what it is, but when I figure it out, I'm going to find out where you are. I promise you, and I promise myself. Rwandan Women Rising, page 52. I loved hearing her story of how she became the highest-ranking female soldier in the RPF. I was able to learn from her that anything is possible if you just put your mind to it. I am capable of many things. It is important to never give up and to keep fighting for what you believe in. The main event that Rwanda is known for is the 1994 genocide. I only knew this about Rwanda before taking this course. However, what I now have learned about Rwanda I will never forget. I have learned how strong the people of Rwanda truly are, especially women. I learned that, yes, the genocide was a terrible event to happen, possibly even one of the worst in history. But the fact that they were all able to overcome it and forgive one another is incredibly inspiring. I'm not sure how I would have handled the situation, but I know very well I wouldn't have been as strong as them. Women carried the country out of the ruins from the genocide and into something beautiful. With mostly women remaining after the event, they felt it was their job to help Rwanda get past this hardship and become one country again, and that is what they did. We had a Jamboard discussion about a quote that stood out to us in our Rwandan Women Rising book, after reading part 5. The quote that stood out to me was, "We're not in competition. That's what I'm trying to say to other women. We are not in competition with men, but we do need to show that we are capable." Rwandan Women Rising, page 336. We then partnered up and discussed the quotes that were shared. I remember my partner and I were almost in disbelief of how incredibly intelligent the women of Rwanda are. They are strong, and they know what needs to be done and how to get it done. We need that type of confidence in the women of America. Another inspiring thing about Rwanda now is how many women have taken leadership roles. There are more women involved in the Rwandan government than are involved in our government here. Rwanda is continuing to break the barrier between women in leadership positions, while we are just getting started. If we are smart, we would look to countries such as Rwanda, who are ahead of us in certain ways, and learn from them. These issues are all too common to just be pushed aside, which is why I invite you to participate in the awareness about Rwanda as well as other countries. There are ways to volunteer, or even just practicing skills such as nonviolent communication and peacemaking. I know I will be practicing these skills and using them to better my own community. These would help immensely to bring our country together, just as it did for Rwanda.